Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week. So we go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so be sure to leave a comment about your pick of the week. And of course, I do have a Kickstarter going on right now for my comic, The Dancer. It's about an assassin slash dancer, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. It's kind of like if Batman actually dealt with his trauma, so hopefully you guys could go check that out. Now, jumping into this week's books, there weren't a lot of huge books for me this week. I had 9 books on my pull, so pretty smaller number of books this week. But number 9 for me, sadly, was Superman Son of Kal-El, issue 8. And I just felt like this is a filler arc thus far. I was expecting a lot more from the crossover between Aquaman and Superman. You know, I wanted to see these two characters really interact and have some more playfulness and meaningful conversations, and I feel like it focused a little bit too much on the action, which I just don't think was entertaining enough here. The plot didn't really hook me at all for this one, and even the art, you know, I thought it was very bright, but it wasn't the best pencils we've seen from the series thus far. So overall, it's just kind of bland for me, and I'm a little disappointed to see that for this series. So giving that 2 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 88 Point Beyond. And, you know, I wasn't expecting too much from this issue just because it is a Point Beyond book, which means it's not really tying into the main story at all. And I don't really care about the slingers. I'm like, okay, do we need a whole issue about this? And that's kind of what happened. I don't feel like I needed a whole issue, and I wish there was more build up in the main series to warrant a whole issue about these characters and Hobby and the rest of the crew. So, you know, I just wasn't really feeling this one. I thought the artwork was pretty solid overall, but also not the strongest for the series. So it's just very forgettable issue, and probably something that's very skippable. I don't really know if this is going to tie in to the bigger story. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, we're up to, and that is Devil's Reign issue 4. Probably one of the bigger books that came out this week, and I sadly am not enjoying Devil's Reign. It does feel like it's just your regular run-of-the-mill event series, and I was expecting a lot more because it was tying into Daredevil, which has been a very solid series. It's the same exact creative team, but it really just feels like it's spinning its wheels doing the same thing that we've seen in the past. A good example of that is the cliffhanger of this issue, where we get to see Kingpin remember that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, which for a cliffhanger was interesting. I liked that moment, but for the overall scheme of things, I'm like, well, do I want to see this again? What does this mean for the plot? And even the rest of it, I felt like, okay, we get to see Visible Woman and Reed team up. That was fun, but it doesn't really do a lot for the bigger plot of this story, especially that next issue is going to be the penultimate issue. Artwork was very gritty. I enjoyed that aspect, so I like the art, but the plot is just not doing it for me for this one. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, issue 4. I really enjoyed the last issue of this book, but I felt this issue really slowed things down again. I really didn't love the opening of that issue, whereas mostly this back and forth between the villain and Kate, but I liked the middle towards the end. You know, the thing I really enjoyed about issue 3 was Susan and Kate's relationship. I liked seeing the sister dynamic. And once again, I like to see that here as well. The artwork was really charming for that. Maybe there's promise we'll see Cassie and America Chavez at the end of this series physically and not just through the text bubbles. But I enjoyed that. The cliffhanger was a little underwhelming though. They just kind of go in a pool and I'm like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But it really is just the character moments that I thought brought this issue to life, but there weren't as many as the previous issue. So overall, I'm going to give that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is The Joker, issue 12. And finally, we do get to see some plot progression here. I do love the dynamic between Barbara and Jim, and that this is genuinely Jim's story. I don't love how Barbara, you know, gets knocked out so quickly just for the sake of plot. But I like that she's involved. I like that Cassandra's involved. I even like that Harvey gets involved in this one. And we learn a little bit more about the motives of the Court of Owls and even Bane being involved in this story. So I thought that was nice. I do wish the plot was moving a little faster, but it was nice to get a bit of a tidbit. There are times where I feel like the art is a little stiff here, but like I said, this was a better issue than some of the other issues we've been getting, but I also feel like there's been stronger moments for this series, especially towards the beginning. So overall, I'm going to give that 3 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is 7 Secrets issue 14, and this is a very good point A to point B issue. There's a lot of good action, a lot of anime vibes to it, and some good conclusion of, or I guess a continuation of Casper and his mom and where she's at, because she got really hurt in the last issue. But the thing I feel like that really picked up here is the point of view of the villain, where we get to see them learn a couple more secrets, where these cases are at. There's definitely some chess pieces being moved. I really like the cliffhanger of this issue where Amon reveals a secret to Casper, and maybe this will give us more answers to the dreams he's having and his overall destiny and his likely fate to die, which we'll actually see if he dies or not. But I thought that was a really good cliffhanger to end things on, and curious to see where the next issue is going to go. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Mighty Morphin issue 16, and I believe this is the last issue that Ryan Parrott's on for this series. He's still doing the other series, which is Power Rangers, but Mighty Morphin's going to be moving on to another writer. And, the war has been pretty solid. I will say, for the mythology stuff, I'm not as invested in Zordon's past, but I think it did a good job at tying loose ends here. There's some interesting characters that show up, like the Blue Phantom Ranger, I think he was called. So we get to see him show up, but I really like the Lord Draken moment here, where I think they've been building that up pretty well in Power Rangers, where he's definitely not a hero, but maybe he's a little less of a villain than he used to be, and he's definitely playing on his own motives, but he felt a little bit more like an anti-hero here. So I enjoyed that aspect a lot, and I like those little moments, and even the cliffhanger. It's like, once again, does Zordon die? What's going on? So I hope we get some answers of that in the next issue. But I thought there was definitely some good big moments to make this the finale of the war, which again I think is the finale of the war here and the finale of Ryan's run for this series. He might have one more issue, but I thought this was the last one. Artwork, as always, is really solid, very bright. There's some really good action in this issue. So overall, a pretty good issue, even if the Mythos stuff wasn't as interesting to me as a Power Rangers fan. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Batgirls issue 3, and I had a lot of fun with this one. Once again, the plot is not as... I'm not as invested in the main plot of more of the future state things that we've gotten with Batman. It's definitely connecting to that. But the heart of this series is definitely the relationship between Babs, Cass, and Stephanie, but especially Cass and Stephanie, and I feel like that really shines in this issue. There's a lot of great moments where Stephanie is being overcome, and Cass is like, no, you're strong, you should have faith in yourself, and you just really see this awesome friendship dynamic between the two that I feel like is only really before this series, and especially in recent years, has only been between the panels, and now we're actually seeing that on panel. And we definitely get some progression with the villain here as well, and seeing how that's going to affect Barbara in particular. I've definitely gotten used to the little bit of the rougher artwork here. I think I've gotten used to that style. So overall, a fun issue, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on. By far my favorite issue of the week. Radium Black is my number 1 pick, and that's issue 12. And, I didn't know what to expect with this one, because it's a character that we really haven't seen much of at all. We just know her power set. We know a little bit about her personality in the previous issues, but this is how you build up a character. And it kind of plays parallel with Nathan's story. So Nathan, in issue 1, was dealing with being a writer and what it means to be a writer. And in his regard, a writer that hasn't gone published in a long time, and emotionally how that feels. And I think this story, on the flip side, did a great job of that through the lens of a social media star, an influencer. And I feel like when stories and comics tend to tell things about social media stars, it's usually very vapid and not really real stories. They don't treat them as real characters. And I like that this wasn't used just to say, oh, look, we're doing something modern. This was used to tell a real story that a real social media influencer would go through, and really felt for this character. And I like the more psychological story being told here about how her life is, because she spends so much time trying to build her social media and trying to find her worth in life, and seeing that other people's words are very much affecting her worth in life because of the job she has, and we see how that affects all her relationships. And then, she becomes a superhero in the mix of all this. So how is she going to have time to do anything? And obviously being a superhero has to do with pleasing people as well. So I'm curious to see what adventure that takes for that character. I also like the very odd couple dynamic between her and the yellow Radiant Ranger as well. So there's just some really great character beats here that totally worked, and the artwork is really good. Even though this is more of not even a superhero issue, the talking head moments were really good, really emotional here. So overall, giving this 4.5 stars, and that was my pick of the week. And let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was. And the viewer's pick of the week from last week was Spider-Woman, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.